are literally shaping the planet.
Purpose is the only pathway to a regenerative future.
We have a choice to stay with the status quo or to change.
What is the point of trying to be just resilient when we can actually innovate?
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Castinson. I'm with Hanley Wood and Myers Research, and it's my pleasure to be here and to talk about how tech can start fixing Atlanta's affordable housing challenges, but it obviously expands beyond Atlanta. This is an issue that is facing most major American metros, but we are taking a spotlight on Atlanta. Atlanta Metro needs to be, by NMHC's numbers, the National Multi-Family Housing Council numbers, Atlanta Metro needs to be producing roughly 12,000 units annually to meet demand, and yet it is only delivering an average of about 9,000 over the past 5 years. So I am honored to be here with this panel and to explore some of the ways that we can address that challenge. And I want to have them each introduce themselves. I have about 3 minutes of slides each. And I'm going to start with you, Mike Altman, who's the Chief Investment Officer at Cortland. Mike, if you can take it away.
Yes, hello. Good morning. I'm Mike Altman, Chief Investment Officer of Cortland. I'm sharing my screen right now. So hopefully everyone can see this. Cortland is a vertically integrated global real estate investor and owner. And in Atlanta, we have 30 communities. We own roughly 185 communities in total, just at 60,000 units. And what we're most proud about is, in fact, serving over 90,000 residents and providing housing to them every day. But as a national investor, we get a great perspective on both the affordable housing question, as well as what Americans are demanding for housing overall. I shared this slide to demonstrate just some of the components of that vertical integration. So at Cortland, we both handle our own, interior design, architecture, including our global supply chain to bring in products for renovations or developments, at the lowest cost and with a customized design, as well as the construction, property management, facilities, the entire resident experience, including marketing and attracting customers to the table. And what we think is that tech really is at the center of all of those. We talked today in this panel about how tech can help affordable housing. I believe that the discussion is fundamentally, how can tech help housing? And that really is moving through all aspects of housing, which we'll talk about more today. Just to give you a parting slide here, showing sort of how Cortland approaches properties. We very often will acquire a community built in the 80s, 90s, maybe even in the 2000s, and truly reposition and renovate. Here are photos of before and afters of a specific community in Atlanta. And really, Cortland tries to truly reposition that product, bring a new economic life to the asset, and deliver a great quality of housing to our residents at a very affordable price. Jennifer?
Sorry, mute always gets me. Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike. And next we'll go to you, Kylie Harper with Katerra.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here today. So a little bit about Katerra. My name is Kylie Harper. I lead U.S. design and the research and development with respect to building products for Katerra. So at Katerra, we are really focused on transforming the construction industry through technology and every single process along the way. We're end-to-end integrated from supply chain technology data. We actually productize buildings, so we'll see a little more on that here in a second, but we build buildings in a factory. So offsite manufacturing is one of our key components, as well as supply chain control, all from beginning to end. So from that, research and development, which is unique to our business, I think that we probably dedicate more resources to that than any other enterprise out there. But you can see architecture, ID, A&E, manufacturing, logistics, construction. We do have a renovations group, and we're over 6,000 people across the world. Big presence in India, across the U.S., do tons in the Middle East as well. We also believe that technology is going to be the innovator. You know, this industry has been stuck in the Stone Ages for a very long time, and has yet to evolve the way, you know, the automotive industry evolved with the Model T, or you know, you pick it. We are the lagging industry in the almost in the world, and so we intend to use technology to really drive that innovation. We design buildings that are manufactured, repeatable, and streamlined. You know, our problem out there from the construction standpoint is going to be a decreased labor pool. Labor shortages in construction continue to be a problem, and our solution really addresses that head on. Moving as much construction to the factory environment is absolutely critical to our mission. Our factories support both components. We have mass timber factories, CLT, you hear a lot about that in the market space these days. And we also have a big chunk of our company that deals with precast concrete. We assume complete control of materials, logistics, and labor. You know, the more pieces of the puzzle you can control, the better at price point you can offer to your customers.
Thank you, Kylie. And now we're going to hear from Josh Humphreys with the City of Atlanta.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Josh Humphreys. I am Director of Housing Community Development here at the City of Atlanta. And so I'm going to share my screen now and talk briefly about some of the work we're doing and kind of our general approach to thinking about how to design and think about innovation and its role in affordable housing in Atlanta. So, as Jennifer mentioned at the beginning of the call, the City of Atlanta is seeing its most significant population growth that we've seen since the 1970s. And that growth is causing a significant increase in the cost of housing. We've seen a 50% increase in the for-sale home price in just the last 9 years in the city. So we started looking, what's causing that? What can we learn from our history of how we got here and why that's the case? So the first thing we did is we looked back at the history of the city's population density and its changes over time. You'll notice if you look at the population per square mile in 2018 and 1940, that the city has seen a population density decrease of over half in the last 75 years or so. And so we started asking the question, why did we see that, and does that play a role in the housing affordability we're seeing? So first thing we learned is that the 1929 zoning code, which is the first zoning code the city had, did not have single family zoning. It allowed duplexes and accessory dwelling units, among other types of housing units, citywide. And that allowed for a population density around 8,500 people per square mile. But by the 1930s, federal government, local government started using practices commonly known as redlining and used other federally backed mortgages like FHA to really create economic exclusion in cities and use this tool both to disinvest in Black and brown communities and create single family housing areas that were designed explicitly to not have low income housing options or affordable housing options in them. What that ended up creating in Atlanta, and we still have today, is that 60% of Atlanta's land use is exclusively zoned for single family housing, cannot contribute to adding housing supply. And that land use and the design Atlanta has today makes Atlanta the 316th most densely populated city in the United States. There are, well over 300 cities, small towns in the Midwest and the Northeast and California that are more densely populated than Atlanta is today. And what that is creating for a city that's seeing the population boom that Atlanta is seeing is we have an inelastic housing supply problem that Jennifer mentioned, right? We're not creating enough housing stock. We have land that's not allowing us to create that housing stock at the pace we need to create it. So it's making housing prices go up much faster than they would otherwise. So our question is, what can we do about that? How can we address that problem and really help the housing supply match the demand that we're seeing in the city? And we think that in a lot of ways, we should look back to our city's past and the design elements that pre-existed the onset of single-family housing exclusionary zoning, and think about how these properties can house more people on them than they do right now. Typically in Atlanta, you'll house one household on a property of this size, but what if you allowed duplexes or quads or other types of things on these same properties that could take that 60% of the land and really enable it to participate in the housing supply of the city as the city grows. Conversions of things like basement apartments or garages into second units can be wealth creators for homeowners, but also create an affordable housing opportunity. Like it's a more typically affordable housing option. Looking, and all the images in here are pictures of places in Atlanta that do exist, that we did this once before. We knew how to create affordable housing types that were beneficial for homeowners and for residents alike. Traditional duplexes, accessory dwelling units using underutilized land and backyards to create housing typologies. And also small apartment buildings. One of the key things that happened in the 1930s and 40s was zoning out many of the city's smaller, mid-sized apartment buildings that don't take up a lot of space, that are subtle, that work well in neighborhoods, that were completely zoned out of cities. So we think that allowing these in places near high-capacity transit, in areas near the urban core, and otherwise make a lot of sense. And again, they provide opportunities for more traditionally affordable housing typologies and can help accommodate the supply gap that we're seeing in Atlanta's housing market. And so those are a few things, and there's other regulations, but I guess the main moral of or where we're at on it is that we think that by looking at our past and the way that we designed the city in the past, we can learn a lot about how to design it into the future. And using those typologies, they worked for a long time, and they have an opportunity to work again. And the reason they don't exist in Atlanta today is because it was intentionally zoned out of the city in order to create economic exclusion. And so if we want to create a housing supply market that does have affordability at a market rate affordability, then we need to allow these types of housing opportunities. So that's a lot of the work we're doing and kind of exploring what types of policies and interventions we can do to help make that possible again in the market. How do we remove regulations that aren't allowing these housing types to exist?
Right. That's great, Josh. Thank you so much. And before we get into a broader discussion, can you please quickly define what you mean when we're talking about affordable housing?
Sure. So the two types of affordable housing I think of are you have dedicated affordable housing, which means there's either some kind of regulatory measure or subsidy in place that says you have to sell your unit at X number of dollars per month because you're getting some tax break from the government or you're in an inclusionary zoning area or whatever. So those are dedicated units that have some kind of restricted price point that's determined by the government. That's a tool that a lot of cities use to make sure that you have affordable housing. What a lot of the ideas that we're talking about here is really more your naturally occurring affordable housing. So how do you create a market environment in which you can have housing types that aren't all luxury housing or single family housing? Because in Atlanta, that's one of the issues, right? You either have higher cost apartment buildings or you have single family housing. And so what we're looking at is the in between there. What are reasons that you don't have a lot of basement apartments or accessory dwelling units or other things that would be more naturally affordable just by nature of the type of housing that it is? So that doesn't have any kind of subsidy or regulatory requirement to be that way, but the market itself kind of dictates that it's less costly than other housing types. So those are the two types that we look at.
Perfect. And Kylie, how about Katerra? How does Katerra define affordable housing?
So for us, as Josh alluded to, we mostly play in the realm of that mandated market where there's some subsidy associated with it. And these are typically large apartment complexes, garden, 3-story walk-up, typically, where cities are offering some incentive, whether it be permitting, whether it be a tax incentive, to the developers in order to make that stuff a reality. And we see that a good bit around, and it seems to be pretty successful.
Perfect. And then Mike, how about Cortland? How do you guys define affordable housing?
Sure. We talk about affordable housing with either a capital A or a lowercase a. Much to Josh's points, those communities with subsidies, tax credits, required compliance to therefore be in compliance with a governmental authority. That's a capital A affordable. That's where there is sort of an offset payment to the developer or owner to keep that rent level lower. At Cortland, we also believe in lowercase affordable. Affordable housing to us is housing that works for families that have the median income of the MSA. The families that are earning $70,000 to $90,000 a year as a combined household, and that their rental payment, that their housing payment does not take up more than 30% of their income. Currently, across Cortland's portfolio, our residents pay about 20% of their income. And so we believe that Cortland is providing affordable housing to those households, and really believe that, finding and being able to provide housing that's in the supply and demand market, the free market, but still provides an affordable, valuable solution for that household is, in fact, affordable.
Great. And so, Kylie, what would you see as the best opportunities to start delivering more affordable housing supply?
So, for us, we see it across the country, and there is no city that I've come across yet that's immune to this problem. The need exists everywhere, and so from our perspective, more density is the key, right? I mean, they're not making any more land to jump on the adage. It's there, and so we have to figure out how to better utilize it. And so I think that we see the trend toward taking advantage of that density to create more supply.
Yeah, and to tie into what Josh was talking about, and an article that I saw this morning is that cities like Des Moines are like only offering single family zoning. Now there are states and whole states that are outlawing single family zoning to get more density, but it's really disappointing to see that there are markets where they're going in that direction and pushing forward despite the fact that we need more affordability. How about you, Mike? What do you see as the best opportunities to start delivering more?
Well, definitely zoning entitlements. I agree with that comment. Outside of zoning, trying to think just a bit more, creatively about the question. First of all, adaptively reusing existing buildings we think is intriguing and brings a different set of problems to solve. But can be an option today when you see an oversupply of perhaps retail or even hospitality spaces, some traditional office maybe in oversupplied, and so can we reuse those spaces? That would certainly be one option. But we think like transit-oriented developments, building housing, even if they're larger market rate communities closer to mass transit options, allows our residents to minimize other expenses. They don't have car insurance and a car payment and the same costs for transportation, and therefore that housing location, that housing option is in fact helps their overall economic budget. Now, technology we think can really help on the operational side of multifamily, in sort of the traditional apartment space, where technology can help with preventative maintenance. It can help with, helping our residents find the best housing option for themselves and get the, services or or get access to, amenities that they may need that, again, helps with offset other parts of their budget. So, we think of the overall consumer budget as really the source of opportunity to create more affordable housing, not just their housing payment.
Yeah, good point. Kylie, how about you in the city of Atlanta? Where do you see the best opportunities to start delivering more affordable housing?
I think I would pile on to Joshua's comments there. I mean, the graphic was compelling in those areas that are currently single family, the creative ways of allowing auxiliary living units. There's a lot of great information hitting the market on that with respect to permits being pulled. I think that's a great thing. I think, as Mike said, zoning and land use, in an already dense city, that's how you're gonna get at it.
What's happening in Atlanta, Joshua?
Well, I think that, we've been talking about it a good bit, but in a lot of ways it's allowing, I think it's both type and density, right? So allowing density is important, but allowing certain typologies are important too. So if you allow like only large apartment buildings, then I think you limit the housing supply, right? So I think you need total housing supply, right? Because we have a growing population. So you need this increase in total housing. You need the density allowances strategically, like to Mike's point. So as the city grows, it grows in a way that leans on the mass transit that it already has and creates a more sustainable kind of development pattern. We're expecting Atlanta to grow from 470,000 to 1.2 million in the next 30 years. To grow like that and have a car-dependent culture would be a problem. So I think that focusing on how do you grow in a way that makes sense for that is important, because we just need housing supply. But I also think it's important to think about how do you allow these type of housing options that have been zoned out because they're viewed as economically undesirable in areas, your duplexes, your basement apartments, things like that are going to be affordable housing types in cities, your small apartment buildings that we've been zoning out for so long. I think it's important, not only because you need the units, but you need units that just are more affordable, because that's not what we created, I think you said 9,000 in the metro area. The majority, at least in the city of Atlanta, were created in the last decade were either luxury housing or single family. And so we're not creating these housing typologies that are affordable. And I think that's going to be an important missing part to the conversation.
Yeah, great point. So now let's tie this all together. This is aimed at technology. So how can we leverage technology in a way that will help deliver more housing supply? Mike, you were touching on this. Do you have more to add?
I think that technology is a necessary component, not just for affordable housing, but for housing in general. It's giving our residents more connectivity so they can work from home and they can, they can interact with the rest of the world, in their living room. It's also about operating the properties more efficiently. It's about reducing the costs from construction, which, Katera is, touching on and trying to integrate all of these different, market participants and all of their different profit motivations. And by streamlining that and building efficiencies, you fundamentally have a lower cost burden and therefore need a lower investment return to satisfy, the same fundamental, return or capital requirements, and therefore have, a lower rental payment. So I think the idea of operations and cost savings is all about delivering to the capital market space what is necessary for investment in housing, but at the same time doing so more efficiently.
Yeah. So he teed you up, Kylie. How are you leveraging technology in a way that can help deliver more housing?
Look, the bottom line to developers who are building this product is getting the entry point down so that their returns make sense with the desired market rental rates, right? And beating those rental rates would be a goal for everyone, right? If they can get their returns and beat the rental rates, we're going to have a self-propagating thing here that really solves the problem. From our perspective, technology is everything. Fundamentally, we still frame buildings. We have new materials and new widgets here or there, but fundamentally, as an industry, we do the same thing today that we did 100 years ago. And without innovation in that space and without using technology to fundamentally transform how we do things, is the definition of insanity. We're going to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So from our perspective, the actual automation in factories and catching our industry up to every other industry in the world is critical to driving that cost down so that we can provide these affordable situations and satisfy developer returns and satisfy city requirements, right? So it's balancing lots of pieces and parts, but technology is critical to that happening from our perspective.
Josh, how are you? Oh, sorry.
Jeff, let me just add one thing, because I think Kylie really makes a good point about the balancing of all those competing interests. And I think that it's important to remember, while affordable housing, really, you first think about rental payments, the absolute magnitude of rent. I think that Kylie's right in that it's also about quality and value, that we're delivering housing that is going to endure over time, that isn't as, isn't going to fall apart or isn't going to be, undesirable in, 25, 30 years from now. And that the value to our residents and to the families that live there is high, right? It's a relative. I think that affordable housing is relative to what they're paying. It's the value relative to price. And so as Kylie is making the point of building things better, a longer term building, a better, amenity space, a larger floor plan because they're building so efficiently, that's more value. And therefore, for that same price, is more affordable.
Yeah, great. So Josh, how are you guys leveraging technology?
Really building off what both Mike and Kylie said, for us, one thing that really we want to look into is how do we design for affordability in our larger multifamily and create city regulations that differ a bit from the suburban development style of kind of metro Atlanta, leaning on kind of the local amenities and assets that we have. How do we design it differently? Looking at how do we use less parking? How do we get our parking minimums and regulations out of the way so that we can let the market kind of navigate its parking needs, especially if they're closer to transit? And then how can we also look at ways to design buildings that work better in urban spaces? I lived in New York for a long time, and to me, it's crazy that I have a dishwasher and a washer and dryer in every apartment building I go to and look at. And, it was always a laundromat in the basement of a building was an amenity. If I didn't have to leave the building, that was a win. But here, like those kind of things, the large apartments, some of these things built into a unit, like a washer and dryer, add a cost over time to the way you build out a space. And so thinking about how do you consolidate those types of developments so that you can take less space and have smaller units, but still make the math work to make it a more affordable housing situation is something I think we're really interested in looking at and trying to also look critically at ways that our own building codes and zoning requirements make it hard to do that. I think that's the space we're trying to facilitate, making it easier for developers who do want to build like that.
Right. I know you guys all prepared one best case example, someone who's doing it right. So if you can just take 1 second to list that and just throw it out there for the audience to think about. Josh, who is yours?
I really like the Pavan Iyer out of 8 Village. He's doing a lot of work. Backyard ATL is the company, and they do really interesting work on ADUs at scale and how to do economies of scale with ADU developments and prefab work and modular design. I think it's really interesting.
Mike, how about you?
I'm gonna have to take a self-benefiting claim, and I think that Cortland's doing a good job of providing a great value to the customer at a lower price through both the renovation of existing communities and bringing the quality and value of the customer to a higher level than the true cost or investment of that property is because of that renovation. So I would give a nod to all of the multifamily companies in Atlanta that are trying to invest in the existing housing stock, because while building new construction is, a part of the solution, I think that taking care of our existing housing stock and not letting it go to obsolescence is really closing that back door. So I would give a nod to all of the multifamily investors in Atlanta that are really trying to improve and maintain the existing housing of our city.
Yeah, great. And Kylie?
I would echo Mike's comments, right? Because that's an investment in the community and an investment in the betterment of the community that may not always pay the same returns as some of these other avenues do. Obviously, from a new construction standpoint, very biased as Mike is for his group. We've invested a lot, and we are really taking a fragmented business and pulling it together to deliver value to our customers and the communities we serve. So very partial to what we're doing. Lots of time in that.
Yeah, wonderful. And we have a question from the audience. Do you think affordable housing will become more prevalent as knowledge workers move away from cities in the post-pandemic economy?
I do believe that the migration within the United States is going to be one of the greatest storylines of the housing industry over the next decade. You're seeing the largest cities really having that out migration. By the way, those larger cities of New York, California, Chicago, these were also higher rent, higher cost locations. So the families moving to the southeastern markets, including Atlanta, are bringing a different perspective. They're looking at the rental rates and they're like, wow, there's a lot of value here. And I really think that this migration story is a key piece. What that leaves behind in the CBDs is, in fact, I believe, an opportunity to really harness and provide the families that are still there, a more affordable option because of fundamental supply and demand.
Awesome.
Right. Hey, Jennifer, we're a bit over time here, so I just want to be conscious of that. That's a great question from Jared, by the way, and Mike, appreciate your answer there. I think it certainly will be an interesting storyline to watch. Jennifer, Kylie, Josh, Mike, that was an outstanding conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you joining us. Hope you all can stick around for some sessions today. We'll hopefully have some follow-up discussions that are in line with some of the threads that you pulled here around affordable. So actually, one of those right now we're going to dovetail into modular. There's obviously some interesting affordable elements going on with modular construction and building. So yeah, if you all can stick around, would love to would love to keep you engaged throughout the day. Again, thank you for your time for participating at this year's summit. Just realized my video wasn't on. But yeah, no, thank you again, and look forward to speaking soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.